I believe that we will win. 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 I believe that we will win.
Sporting Kansas City at its annual launch party Thursday evening at No Other Pub. I'm Sam McDowell, Sporting Kansas City beat writer for The Star, here with Tate Steinlage, our full 90 blogger. We're going to discuss a few of the keys for Sporting Kansas City's season here.
All right, Tate, let's start with you. What do you really view as the key to this season here?
Well, one of the big things, if you look at what they did this offseason, Sporting Kansas City's kind of offseason plans, they doubled down on depth, and they got guys, that necessarily might not be stars, but they're going to lift the floor and lift the projection at the bottom. And I think the big thing is there, Peter Vermees as a coach has always been great with tinkering with lineups and using depth, but sometimes he tinkers a little bit too much and has too many options. So I think, they're going to have 3 competitions with U.S. Open Cup, with the regular season play, and then eventually the CONCACAF Champions League group stage. I think with that, it's going to be interesting to see how he uses those options, how he manages having a consistent back line, and just how he kind of uses those pieces and how they function as a team. Because I think if you can find that consistency while also utilizing that depth, you're going to find a really good team with the Sporting Kansas City group based on what they did this offseason.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that offseason strategy, so to speak, was just based on the fact that this team suffered through injuries the last 2 years and sort of used that as an excuse for why they went on the downslide the last 2 years. And it was a valid excuse, too. They did not have their regular guys. And the number twos maybe didn't have the gap closed enough on the number ones that they might this year. So it will be interesting to see exactly how he uses those lineups. But they've got a lot of guys on the wings now that can really provide service. But, when you talk about adding Brad Davis, when you talk about the existing Graham Zusi, adding Justin Mapp, but how do you think that those guys, fit in with this team? And Tate, how do you think that are those guys really scoring options, or are they more, passing options?
Yeah, there's a few things that you can unpack there. And one thing that I wrote in one of my preview pieces is that a guy like Justin Mapp, and even especially Justin Mapp, but even Brad Davis as well to a certain extent, they've never been huge scoring contributors in terms of, piling on 15 to 20 goals contributed each year. They've always, done their part kind of behind the scenes, maybe Brad Davis a little bit more. But I think this year what you're going to see is the wider play is going to be a lot better, which I think is going to open up the field for Dom Dwyer more. And like you said, if he can stay healthy, I think he's going to have a better year. Christian Nemeth routinely would dribble into the middle of the field, which would pull defenders toward Dom Dwyer, which made space just pretty much hard to find for him. And I think that's going to be big this season. And with that new, the possible new signing at central forward, I think that could be big if it pans out. But a big thing for especially any, forward coming into the league is getting acclimated with the defenders, because American defenders in this league are someone that's been in MLS for a long time, realizes that big center backs, they like to push you around. They like to, just ask Dom Dwyer. He's always getting pulled around in matches. And I think that's going to be huge to see how they get acclimated to this league.
Yeah, it's a good point, too. And maybe that space you're talking about also makes Benny Feilhaber more of a scoring option. Now, he did have 10 goals last year. A lot of those were from the PK spot, though. So we'll see if maybe other guys distributing allows him to take on more of a scoring role as well. But, having said all that, where do we see this team finishing this year?
It's the thing that I've listened to this offseason, what's been said to me, and kind of what I kind of have come to an agreement with is that I think their ceiling might be a little bit lower than last season, but I think the floor is definitely rose. I think they're a really solid team with a lot of depth. They're basically too deep at every position, especially if they make this new signing at central forward. And I think in that way they're going to be better at the bottom. But I think a lot of other teams, especially look like Toronto FC, FC Dallas with their young guys and some of the additions they made this offseason, I think they have a better ceiling, a higher ceiling, able to go deeper in the playoffs. However, you look at the last 2 seasons, they've kind of faltered toward the end of the regular season. I think with this depth, they could make a run in the playoffs just based off that. But I think some other teams did a little bit more to kind of make that extra step, or to take that extra step.
Yeah, I think FC Dallas is going to be the team to beat in the West. I really like what they've done and just the way that they've developed guys within their own system already. But, me personally, I think Sporting Kansas City is kind of similar to what they were last year. I think they can get up to that 2 or 3 spot in the West. Like I said, I think FC Dallas is going to be the team to beat there. But I think that they are going to be more equipped to go through the grind of the season to where they don't have that lull that maybe we've seen over the past couple of seasons. But a lot of just sort of question marks for what happens with certain spots. Does Graham Zusi reemerge as the guy he was in 2012, 2013? Because that could be a big addition, just in terms of contribution that he didn't have last year. So I think that there's a lot of things that could fall into place for Sporting Kansas City, and if they do, they could get further than they were the last 2 years. I talked to Rob Heineman a couple of days ago, and he said the big emphasis this season is they've got to host a big game at Children's Mercy Park. The last 2 years, this team did make the playoffs. Those 2 games were on the road. They did not bring a big game back to Children's Mercy Park. So read more about that Sunday. Tate's got a lot of coverage in the blog on our Full 90 blog on kansascity.com. We've got stories in the paper every day this week. Make sure you check out all of our coverage. Thanks for joining us.